Kim, you built your first web page in 1995. Can you tell everyone what the internet was like back then?
Yeah, uh, it was interesting, as in we saw a lot of opportunities back then that, of course, we take for granted these days. But um, having this media where we can now share information about our businesses on a media that can be shared, on various platforms was interesting. I saw the writing on the wall, so to speak, and we I was in a company in a software company that was not even geared to or prepared to do websites yet. And I said, let me see what this HTML thing is and see if I can create something. And obviously, it lacked 90%, 95% of what we can do these days. But it was interesting. I don't know if you can remember, but we had the editor where it was a split screen where you wrote the actual code in the bottom and it showed the result in the top, almost like the old what was that text editor we had? Uh, Word Perfect, I think it was called something
Yeah.
where you actually wrote the tagging in the bottom of the screen, and so I had an editor like that, and it was fascinating to get going with that, and very soon after that, since I am a disabled person, I'm a neurodiverse, and I'm like, what can I do to lay the foundation for good web work for people such as myself? I back then I hadn't even looked into accessibility yet because it wasn't even on the table yet. And I thought, what can I do to make life easier for people like me to consume this data? So there, I didn't even know about it, but I laid the foundation for my accessibility life right there while learning. It was back in the days where you were proud of yourself because you did a beautiful table layout, and years later CSS came around, and we took it upon ourselves to learn that. But in the beginning, it was just table structures. It was like it was horrible, but it was fun. It
Did
was
you
fun.
know how big the internet would become?
No, I thought or hoped it would because I thought this is a great way to promote yourself, like having these online brochure type pages that we can actually share with people and get work. So I like this. This has the potential to be really big.
Did you get a lot of business early on?
I didn't because I was an internal resource. I wasn't even a developer. I was a manager at that point, so I was helping other people doing projects in established platforms like Microsoft Office with the basics, doing database solutions with Access. That was how I got started with it. Um, but I had no idea, and fairly quickly we saw the potential there, saying, "How about we create a page where we talk about this company?" So we work on that, a couple of us.
And
Um,
then in 2010, you start to specialize in digital accessibility and ADA compliance. Why? What happened? What was the decision? How did that go?
I had been a full stack developer for years, and I kept circling back to the what can I do to make the work I do in websites be more friendlier. Not using the word compliant yet, but friendlier for people such as myself. And having a background in graphics design, I thought, well, it's going to be something with colors because we see colors in a weird way. Font size, font types, layouts, text width, and all these things that make it a better experience for people with neurological disorders. And then it was like a door that opened up into the world of accessibility. Because once I got inside, I'm like, wow, I had no idea the world of inclusivity and accessibility was this big. So I immediately switched to, I'm going to learn all this because there's going to be people that have vision issues, the people who have the ability to only use a keyboard, and all of a sudden it took off. So it actually I got started simply because I was looking for a solution for creating something for myself in the category of disability that I have, and so I had empathy right there at that turning point, 2010, where I seriously put my web design skills in the background in terms of just creating solutions and picking up accessibility and merging that. So everything I did going forward was a very high level of inclusivity and accessibility.
So you've been in this industry at the very beginning when there was much lighter work. I mean, we're at a different, this is a different stage now. So I started learning about even what accessibility was in 2017. You've been in this space for a long time. And I think there is so much, I know there's so much information and knowledge to extract from you. We're going to get to that in a moment. But first, let me introduce you. Kim Vigsbo is you're the owner operator of accessibilityconsulting.com. You also hold a business academy. So this is the Accessibility Business Academy. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. But can you give us more of a background? Tell us about you and yeah, help us learn more about you so we can then get into everything that you're doing currently.
Wow, how much time do we have?
Quick.
um, um, I obviously love to work with digital media, and for years I worked with various agencies, solo entrepreneur myself. But I always included accessibility into it, and it was only a couple. Well, what is it now? 20, probably the same time you started. I separated those two entities. You can see behind me, I have a sign that says Stonehill Media. That's my still if highly effective and active web design business where I do Webflow, but it's accessibility. So everything I do is now accessibility. So instead of doing it in two steps, I really very early on realized that it's got to be done at the same time. Um, Working with agencies and larger companies in general, accessibility is still, regrettably to this day, being looked at upon as an add-on, as something we do if we have time, we get around to it, and we all know getting around to it never happens because there's a resource issues, there's budgeting issues, we ran out of time, whatever it is. So I have been really focused on being the person to push accessibility to the left. No matter what we do, I sit down with designers before they put a dot on the canvas and going, what kind of data are we up against? What are we going to present? Here's the components that I like to suggest we use because they are easier to make compliant than traditional carousels. Let's not use that. FAQs, the open and close, let's not use that. Let's just use text, simple text. So having worked for very large companies, I recently came off a 3-year contract with American Express where we did exactly that. We rewrote the process from day one to final delivery, where accessibility was built in constantly. As in little iteration, you do something, we go back, we make sure, did we actually manage to make it inclusivity basis and is it compliant? Um, and so there was less work at the end of each phase. So it makes sense from a business point of view to do it that way. But also, we guarantee, almost guarantee, that the project is a lot higher quality in terms of accessibility and inclusivity than it would have been if we have to go back and revisit it again. It's also costlier, cost time. Um, so uh, I felt that splitting that up into a accessibility specific business, the accessibility consulting, allowed me the option to get hired by other companies that maybe had an agency function when creating websites for people, and I could allow myself offer my services to these design companies where we go, okay, so this is what we do with this beautiful design, but we add this layer to it right here to make it compliant. And people are sometimes a little hesitant. Well, it's going to take longer. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's you do it right the first time, and you actually gain some momentum. You gain some skill set. You do it as a natural part of delivering. So that's why I split it up. If you look at my Stonehill Media website, I still talk about accessibility up there, but because I never separate them anymore. But from a business focus point of view, I have separated the two entities. So I can really focus and get deep on the message that I have, especially for accessibility consulting, where we do a little bit more than just design work. We help with audits and VPATs and whatnot.
And for your, we'll get more into the academy in a moment, but just to help us understand each of these three blocks, we have Stonehill Media. This is your design company. You have accessibility consulting, where you specialize in accessibility, offer various services, and then you have the academy. So quickly, as a preview for what's coming later, what is the academy?
I got asked a lot from fellow developers, designers saying, where can we go find information about how to get started utilizing accessibility? And most of these really good programs are very technical in nature. And people going, I don't understand it. I don't have the time to follow weeks and weeks of training. Do you have a program that tells us the absolute foundation to wrap a business around the concept of accessibility when it comes to web professionals and agencies? And that's how it got started, saying, there's a lot of information. There's beautiful books out there that people go in depth with it, and it's a little overwhelming for people who want to start. And I agree with that. So I said, let me create a business academy where we simply lay out the foundation. No matter what background you have, we lay a foundation for accessibility work. But from a business point of view, there's not much technology going on in my academy. It's all about laying the foundation. How do you talk to people? Client acquisition. What is the different terms? How do you present accessibility to people in a way that they can understand it? The three pillars: the business, the legal, and the human part. We talk about that, and not many books really talk about the human side of accessibility. It's all about, oh, we CAG this and area label that, and that's beautiful. And there's a time and a place for that. But 90% of people came back to me when I said, I want to start some training, saying, can you help us with the most basic, the most fundamental of the world of accessibility? For instance, what does VPAT mean? How do we do that? What is it? What do we say to clients that already have an overlay? How do we respectfully guide them in the right direction without, because somebody had made a decision about that. So there's all these business concepts that I now help people with. And I was thinking in the beginning, maybe I should do a little bit more technology driven. And people are like, no, we will find out how VCAG is and all the success criteria. We'll catch on with that. But please help us lay a foundation for implementing accessibility. I'm a project manager. I'm a developer. I'm a designer. Uh, Various sizes. I've done all the way up to the sizes of American Express for business approach. So I really totally believe that I hit a market there, a need in the market where nobody has really served that market. Like I said, there's tons of good books over there. I know you have written a couple of really good books too. And there's a lot of people who write these books about, but they're technically, and people go back to them. I can give you a fun little story. I was invited out to give a presentation for a marketing group. There was about almost 100 people, 95 to 100 people. And the topic were accessibility. So I came out there. I was like ready to give them, an impressive insight into accessibility. And 5 minutes into it, I go, excuse me, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? And I'm like, oh, it turns out that not a single person knew what accessibility were in essence. So I had to take a big step back and go, okay, this is what accessibility is. This is why we have accessibility. This is what ADA is, and this is why it is so easy for people to get sued. Because, and I started from scratch. I got a lot of good questions. Those questions laid the foundation for Accessibility Business Academy, where there was this gap in people's knowledge, in understanding. I I don't know if you have shared that with you, but I'm actually writing a book. I'm almost done with it. It's going through revision, where I talk about accessibility in 36 chapters with not a single technical word. It's purely understand all the nuances of accessibility, inclusivity, ADA without being technical. And based on that, because people ask me, and they still ask me, I get messages up on LinkedIn saying, "What does that mean?" I'm like, okay, somebody has to explain where how they can get to the next level, but the next level is usually skipping what I'm now teaching. So I think I'm fulfilling a good mission here for helping people understand. A lot of smaller companies have no clue what accessibility is, and my book, coupled with my willingness to share and teach people about it in a non-technical fashion, is going to bring us over that little hump where people are unaware of accessibility and they don't know about accessibility. And once they know, they would like, okay, what's the next step? And that's where we send them forth in additional training.
Are you announcing your book's title, or are you keeping that back until you publish the book?
I have two working titles. One is Understanding Accessibility, a guide for small business owners. And I had the other one going Accessibility, Digital Accessibility Demystified. It's working titles. I don't know which one I'm going to do, but somebody suggested to me the other day. We like the word demystified because there's a lot of people has this big question mark in front of them. They go, I have no clue what accessibility is.
Well,
So
either way, when your book is out, right, we're going to have a link to in the description already. We've got accessibilityconsulting.com, and we've got your business academy, which is doing really well. And I want to ask you more about that because there's a lot of information we can get from everyone that's a part of your academy. Before we get there, you are a member of the IAAP. Is that membership worth it to you?
absolutely. I meant to get one of the certifications going, and I'm happy to announce that I have not had time to stop and take a certification. I'm so busy helping people. But it is an organization that if you consider yourself being an accessibility professional on whatever level, whatever category, you should be a member of that because they share a huge amount of really solid information. There are special classes you can take that has nothing to do with certification. Once you are certified, you can continue to learn. There's network opportunities. They share information. They have a newsletter that comes out. I think it's once a week now, but I think you can set how often you want to see it. And anything that happens in the world of accessibility will be something that they pick up. They have lately talked a lot about accessibility in Europe, which is a big thing. And people seem to think that, oh, we're here in America, that doesn't pertain to us. Yes, it does, and you better get hopping on it. So they share a lot of information that you normally would have a difficult time finding. So I would say absolutely. And should you decide to take, they have a couple of different certifications. They're good, solid foundations. The certification itself is not important, and this is my personal view. It's not important. The journey of getting to the certification with all the practice you have to do, that is worth all the money in the world because they are really giving you an enormous amount of support, an enormous amount of insight that you normally wouldn't think about. So
And
the short answer is yes, absolutely.
that's something that I think when anybody who's watching this and you're thinking about the different certifications, and this can apply to different digital asset owners, this can apply to people want to enter that are wanting to enter the space. It's not so much the certification as it is what the certification represents. When you make that switch, you're going to have success in whatever you're trying to follow. So like you're the digital asset owner, let's say you're a website owner, and you're just, some people are really concerned with certification. Okay, the certification is represents all of the work you've done. That work is what you're really after. It's not the so much the end result, but that's a great point. And you have worked with Penske, you have worked with Microsoft, you've worked with American Express. How did you start working with these enormous companies? And what is one lesson you've taken away from working with all three?
Um, wow, I can talk a great deal about that. But one of the things that made me attractive to these people is I am what you call a unicorn. I've been in the business for so long that I am very well versed in every aspect of accessibility, from project management to audits to remediation to help. My background as a web designer and a programmer helps me be able to talk to people. So what these big companies are looking for is somebody who can fit into these various chairs. I'm also very comfortable with C-level people and discussions about strategy. Um, but what I have learned about um, my experience with working with these big companies is that I actually prefer to work with small companies. And I'm not saying that to pick on the big guys, but big companies have a very rigid structure where if you want to get something done, it takes multiple steps going through multiple layers of people, multiple decision makers, and finally, maybe 18 months into the process, we can get something done. And I'm not picking on them in any way. This is what big companies do. They have all these decision making levels. Um, and I fit into all of them, but I have found myself sometimes being a little frustrated saying, we have an audit here and we found some serious issues. And I'm like, good, let's get started on it. Yeah, we have a plan to stretch out to 18 months. What? 18 months? Give me 18 days and we'll hop on it. So if you are like me, a great passion for accessibility, inclusivity, and the human touch, working in a big environment like that sometimes might rub you the wrong way in terms of, I want to be sharing this with information with people. I want to bring in more people in front of these computer screens that can do better than they can right now, not waiting 12, 18 months. Small businesses, as you so well know, you're doing a lot for them, and the turnaround is momentarily, just days, because we understand that there's a human side, there's also a legal requirement, and we are trying to help them protect themselves. So we are able to move forward. We have a certain approach that I know you share with people in your programs, where this is what the lawsuits requirement, the various lawsuits are looked at, saying this is the criteria for what they're being sued on, and let's go fix those right away. I've done that with big companies, and big companies go, yeah, we're not quite ready yet. So I learned that if you are going to work with a company the size that you just mentioned, you have to have a, a level of patience where you're gonna hold back on your passion a little bit because there's a process in place. I found myself at American Express in the need of writing a brand new SOP, standard operating procedure, for every step of the journey from the very first dot to delivery for projects, because nobody has actually sat and put all these strings together. Um, where this is what we do with small businesses every day. It's not a problem. So I will encourage people to search for jobs that is in big companies. Just bear in mind that you need to be patient, and also you might find yourself being compartmentalized a little bit, saying, "Well, we need you to take care of all our designers, or we need to take care of the quality insurance people, or you need to train, or you need to do this and that." Where if you are like me, I like to be all over the place because I like to follow the process and the journey from A to Z. Does that answer your question?
It does answer my question, but that was one part. The other part is how did you come to work with these gigantic companies like Microsoft? What happened? Did they reach out to you? Was it a LinkedIn message? How did that all start?
Actually, two of them, uh, Penske and American Express, reached out through an agency where they had been giving the task, find us a unicorn. Now, they probably didn't call me a unicorn back then, but it's like find somebody who has been in the business long enough that they know all the different steps that goes into a full journey. Um, and Microsoft is, I worked for Microsoft for years in 3 different countries, and I was the person responsible for the design for the Access database. And I kept bugging people, literally bugging people. This is not compliant. There's something wrong with this color. There's something wrong with it. And they're like, okay, you go to United States. I'm from Denmark, so I worked in Denmark, then in Ireland, and then I ended up in the States. Okay, go to the department in the States and tell them all this good stuff. So I did that, and that's how we go. Oh, this is accessibility. So let's work on a product, not a website, but a product. Does that need to be accessible as well? So it certainly does. It most certainly does. So I got started with that. I rewrote the manual, the technical manual for how to put an access database together in a way that I was including uh, inclusivity and accessibility into the learning of how to create a correct database. And that was really great. Now these days, all the Office products have a little accessibility component built into them, but back then it was completely manual. Um, but to my surprise, Microsoft was very willing to get this done a lot faster than I actually see these days. Um,
Well,
um,
so I'll stop you there and ask you, 2026, I've seen so much more demand for accessibility and compliance products and services. On your end, what are you seeing? Have you experienced the same, or is that what you're seeing in the marketplace? Is that what you're hearing from your students?
there's two things in that. What I hear from my students is they have a need to learn client acquisition. Unless it's inbound. Can you make something happen inbound? Yes, you can lay the foundation, and this is what I did. I reached out to recruiters, introduced myself, gave them as much information as they could possibly handle, so that when a project comes in, they look at their whatever whiteboard or something, say, "Hey, there's this guy Kim. He will be good at that." So there is this. You lay the foundation for. You can search for jobs, and these days it's like a couple of hundred applicants come in for every job. So it's like a lottery. If you have given an opportunity, been given an opportunity to learn, have a more close relationship with a recruiter or a recruiting organization, that's where I feel that I'm getting the most valuable information from. But also, and this is just for this year, we have a upcoming requirement for a stronger 88 type 2 requirement where, depending on how many people you have in your community, you either do this April or April next year. And right now, currently, we have about 12 weeks left for the first deadline for April 24 of this year. So at this point, I think I'm on number 4 request for proposals for townships, a government transportation company, another township, and a school and a learning organization that reaches out saying, can we find somebody that we think can master this process for us? And so if you let people know that there's a deadline, which I share a lot with people. There's a deadline. 88 Title 2 is getting an upgrade, and we should all be compliant with that if you are working government or federal. So I think if you share with the world that you are indeed capable of lifting an assignment like that, meaning you have C-level experience, so you can talk strategy, you have the skill set of a project manager, but in accessibility role, and you can audit, and you can explain the difference between audit and scanning. That's also important. You can talk to them about why we need to remove the overlay. There's a township that had an overlay. I'm like, oh, let me help you with that. And then training, because as soon as a site is as compliant as we can. The first time somebody provides content, there's a potential there for a violation. So there's some training involved in that as well.
And I
Uh,
think one thing that makes, a starting point that you make a good, you said this earlier, and it's so true. It's not about so many people they immediately want to go into the technical side. I want to be an auditor. I want to start remediating. And there is so much of a need, as you just expressed, for just someone to explain what's going on here because people don't even know the very, very foundational, like the basics to even get started on a project. Like, right, how can you have
yeah.
this advanced, very technical project if you don't even understand the very basics of what the project is about? And so that comes up a lot and a lot. And what you're doing now, I want to talk about your academy. So this is the Accessibility Business Academy. And just as a reminder here, this is a group for agencies, web professionals, and entrepreneurs who want to build a business around digital accessibility services. So we've
Yeah.
talked about the beginnings of this academy. Now it's really grown. What is the single most asked question you get from the members of your community?
They in a very high percentage of people come to me and go, I'm not sure what niche I should pick because I am not a web developer, but I am a really experienced project manager. Can I still work with accessibility? And it's my job in the academy to say, first of all, yes, you can, but also how am I going to help you link your current knowledge with the world of accessibility? I also have other people that there's a small group of people who they have web design background, but have no interest in offering accessibility service themselves, but they like to talk about it. So we have a referral program built in with outsourcing. So people can go, I will teach these people in that particular category enough information to prove to a client that yes, you have issues, screenshots of audits or whatever, and then take that back to either our organization or some of the vetted people we have in our group and let them be a white label service for you. So you gain the contract, you gain the contact, we establish the work relationship, you have white label people helping you. So you can almost say it's like a referral program, but in a sense. So there are room for access for people in the world of accessibility on all levels. I have one person who has never even barely heard about accessibility, but he's like, um, I need to learn it. So okay, so let's start from day one. So I have people that are extremely experienced, 15 years of remediation, solid people, people who have been C-level business people for years. They will fit right into another concept that I teach in the academy is how to become a fractional accessibility provider. It seems to be the way to go. So many people are being laid off, and they're like, "What should I do now? I have all these skills and experience, but nowhere to go with it. Nobody wants to hire me. Now is the time to learn how to become a fractional operator." And fractional is slowly gaining momentum in all aspects of business, but now also solidly becoming something that is being considered for a lot of companies when it comes to accessibility.
Why do you think I've seen some very talented, skilled, experienced accessibility professionals who are fired, and I know because I will see them in the LinkedIn feed, and they will
Yeah.
say, "Hey, I've been fired. Now I'm open for work. I'm looking for new work." Obviously, it's all anecdotal, but given the increased demand for accessibility, and we're seeing the firings come from not only enterprise accessibility companies, but also just companies with accessibility work in house. Why do you think these professionals are being fired, or do you have a theory on why that is the case?
Yeah. I think the main reason is identical to marketing. Once companies feel a little constrained on the economics of the financial of the company, what is going to be dropped first? Marketing, which is kind of like stupid. And now also following with that is accessibility, because it's still to this day considered an add-on, an afterthought, something we do when we have time. Now we don't have time for it anymore. We cannot afford it. We have to lay off a couple of people. So marketing and or accessibility people, we let them go. I'm not saying that's a solid reason for it, but this is what I feel and what I have heard from a lot of people, especially companies saying, well, we can always hire them back in when it's time to do accessibility. I'm like, ooh, no, that's not an afterthought. It's something you need to do. So that's why I think because so many people are being laid off, that going the route of fractional accessibility would be a great success and highly demand.
It's something that's so obvious in the marketplace to me when I talk to clients, just observing what the natural progression is of these different laws and regulations. Fractional accessibility makes so much sense, and this gets back to your community or your academy because now these people that maybe they had a job before, they don't have one now, and they're looking for work. They need a way to make money. They need an income. Now they can pick up on this independent side where yes, you have more responsibility, but you also have more freedom. You're more open to choose what you'd like, and maybe you end up doing work that you'd actually prefer over this job that you had previously.
That's true. There's another segment that is being, I wouldn't say ignored, but being overlooked. That is the European accessibility market, where, as those who have been following it a little bit, they know that the repercussions of not being compliant can be very severe. But people here in the States go, that doesn't pertain to us. What should I do with an American company? So if that American company is delivering any kind of digital services to a company in Europe, they here in the States need to be compliant, needs to be responsible, and is responsible. So there's an opportunity there for people who have that background to set themselves up as a consultant for European accessibility inclusivity. But for companies here in the States, they don't have to travel to Spain, to France, to Italy. They can do it here in the States and guide people and advise people on what to do for companies that have a representation in Europe. And there's a little bit of training involved because you need to actually look into that country's specific rules and regulations on top of what Europe is already requiring. But that's something you can acquire that knowledge. And you don't have to learn all 27 countries in Europe. Just do the one that you're interested in working with. So there's an untapped market right there for consulting for accessibility people.
What you just said is so important because I think a lot of people too, especially when they're focused in on trying to get a job, they're not paying attention to if you flip that, if you go ahead and just ease out of that mindset or transition out, you'll realize no, this isn't closed. This is wide open. It's just a matter of what you are applying yourself to. If you're applying for job after job, you're going to go through that job process. And of course, you could get a job from that. But while you're looking for that job, have you considered, are you open to the idea of working for yourself and then making more money that way, taking on more selective work? Because you just said it. This is what I've been emphasizing on this channel. This is wide open. It's just what do you want to do and how do you get there? But it's right there for you.
Yeah, it is. Um, and there's this saying that if you get a job, no matter how high ranking it is, how much experience you have, you can get fired or laid off, whatever the term is, and without even having to be your problem or your cause. But if you work for yourself, you cannot fire yourself. You cannot be fired. You are responsible for taking on the assignments that you want, and you can increase, you can go in a specific direction that is not maybe following a full-time job. So can we all work as independent people? Probably not. But there's a very, very large market for people that can segment themselves into specific roles that is highly desirable for companies as consultants. I've even heard examples of people getting hired back into the company that laid them off as consultants. And like, how crazy is that? So there's a need for it. Sometimes it regrettably, the reason is money. People are uncertain about the economy. They see all these things happening in the world and go, we gotta recoup some money. So going the contractor, the agency way, offering this kind of work to companies of various levels, I think it's a great decision to make. And this is why one of the main reasons I did the academy, saying I would like to help you wrap a business around your knowledge and your skill set, so we can introduce you to the world as a reliable consultant, um, willing to work on whatever level it is that the company needs.
Well, even if you have a job now, what you just stated, you can be fired at any time. And don't think, the years of loyalty, they will throw you outside. They will
Yep.
discard you as fast as you were able to come in. So even if you have a job, I'd recommend opening that up for yourself, giving yourself that option. And at least you have that, right? And it's something that you're building while you have that job, you have that baseline money, because that's really important, is to have the baseline money as you're building up and as you're leveling up your business.
Yeah.
For you personally, with your business and your operations, what pain points do you have?
Mm. Um, I have sometimes the problem. Well, there's two-sided. The people I reach out to that needs my help. One of the pain points, and is why I'm writing a book about it, is the lack of understanding. So I can come in with all the skills in the world, and people go, "We don't know what it is." Regrettably, there's a small percentage that says we don't care. I'm like, okay, there's nothing we can do about that. But we're up against the barrier of understanding that until we get past that barrier, we can't really offer them good service. So there's a lot of education, there's a lot of training awareness that goes into that. And I find myself spending quite a lot of time getting people to understand the concept of accessibility, ADA compliant, why it is important. Um, and then I turn around going, I have people I work with in our academy. We actually try to outsource work within our own academy to people. And sometimes there are people who don't have the necessary skill set yet. For instance, there's not many people in the academy that fully master VPATs, for instance. And VPAT is yes, solid skills. You have to be really good at your audits, and you also have to follow the strict structure of the VPAT itself. So you create your ACR. But sometimes I run into I would love to outsource, but I don't have good people right now that I can trust. A lot of people coming up in the industry saying, yeah, well, we would love to help you, but we don't have the skill set yet. We don't have the background yet. Can I honestly send a person out on a project that is just a beginner? It's a very delicate balance. And I know you have sometimes brought that up yourself. What can we do? We can create an academy and get people up to speed as fast as we can. So it circles back to my academy.
Well, I always, especially now, I recommend that if you're not technical, if you don't have the technical background, don't even get into it. Go ahead and move into like project management or something else where you can help companies with policies, because the need is there for project management, organization, policy development, and other aspects of digital accessibility and compliance that are non-technical. So if you're
Yeah.
forcing the technical side, you're doing something that you need at least, and this is if you're really pushing it, at least 8 months or a year of experience and repetitions before you can even start, because you just don't have that experience. And that's something I tell people over and over again. It's like, look, don't, I know you want to be an auditor, but don't force it, because it's not there. And this space is wide open right now. So why go ahead and pursue this when you can do something else? And the money is going to be there either way. Like, you're going to be able to make money in either way, because the need is there either way. So
Yeah.
I think that's very important. Is if you're a beginner, like, hey, like, you can do it if you want to. If it's something you really want to push for, but I would go ahead and choose something that you can get started with faster.
Exactly. And this is one of the things I really love about the Academy. I have created a list of, I think it's 20, 25 titles that is all accessibility related. And I try to help people figuring out obviously what they're good at. They come to me with a skill set. And we say, what title, what function would that align to in the accessibility world? And then we go in and almost on a one-to-one, I get them started in that so we can benefit from their experience, put a accessibility label on it, and start working with vocabulary and technical terms if needed, but without being technical. I, I I gave one person an example saying when I worked for American Express, I for 2 years in a row, I ask for, may I please have an ops manager to help me? Because while I'm out doing my accessibility things, all the other things do not get the attention it needs, like booking, phone training, updating. So after 2 years, they couldn't find one. So after 2 years, I finally got a part-time ops manager, and what a relief that was. So I know firsthand how important it is for even a non-technical project manager to be part of an accessibility team. It is so valuable. We have a couple of people in the academy now that's following that route, and I can tell you that on any medium to large size project, they will be right in there with the rest of us. So it doesn't really matter what title you want, what function you want. If you're non-technical, we have plenty of stuff you can do where you are highly desired in your presence in the team.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm not in agreement because that's exactly like don't there's just so much here. And this is why your academy is so important and serves I mean, this is extremely valuable. If you are just getting started in this, if you're interested in it, right? You don't have to be a web developer. There's so much to do
Yeah.
and there's just a way that you can be a part of it and be successful in this and make a lot of money. There's so many opportunities that we're just seeing over and over again in the marketplace, and it's not going away anytime soon, right?
No.
We when you look at AI is really helping you do what you already do better and get it done faster. So it's just wide open. It's wide open. And you operate the Accessibility Business Academy, which is going to be linked in the description. This is going to, if you haven't joined, go ahead and join this academy. You'll be in contact with Kim. There's so many resources here, right? I mean, you're setting people up for success.
I like to think so. Thank you for that. And since we are talking a little bit about it, there is a paid tier, but you come in completely for free. The program is the same. You get the same information. The paid tier is that you get more access to me and more one-on-one. But I'm doing it because accessibility is a passion. I want other people to feel that passion, to learn it, to benefit from years and years of experience. And people, they look at host of accessibility on LinkedIn and it's accessibility this and accessibility that, and they're like, what can I do to get into this world? It's fascinating. There's so much going on. Join the free academy and learn. Get your background aligned with some form of a title or function, and we'll take it from there. And eventually, like, well, I think I'm good now. I think I can help with training the concepts. All of a sudden, they're now an accessibility educator, which is one of our titles. So I think, and you're right, AI will definitely be play a major part, but we're also going to learn what kind of AI works to support accessibility. It's not like you can't just slam an AI on things and whoopsie, you have an audit. It's not working like that. And I spent a good amount of time explaining to people what the difference is between scanning, audited, and with or without AI.
Well, yeah, and I was looking into a few years from now, like the landscape's going to change. So you have to understand, where AI is relative to what services are being offered, et cetera. But that's not now. What is right now is this is a wide open industry.
Yeah,
There's more demand than there are people who can competently, proficiently, and expertly fill the demand. And so that's why you're seeing salary soar on jobs posted. You're seeing more and more. There's more and more demand, and I think there's increasing. You can make more in digital accessibility, and this is going to be an industry where you can make as much as, like, let's just say you take the job path. You can make $250,000 a year starting
yeah,
in accessibility. I mean, there are many lawyers and doctors who do not start at that pay rate. So
right.
it doesn't take as long to get there. So there's just so much here. You are playing a big part in helping people understand where to get started. And I want to ask you this. We're almost out of time, but I want to ask you this before you go. What is the single best piece of advice that you would give to anyone who is thinking about getting into this industry right now?
I like to start people with what I call my three pillars. Accessibility is not just technology. It's not just legal scare tactics. There are three pillars, and I want you to learn them and be very solid in the knowledge of them. So when you talk to people about it, you know that. In no particular order, it's the human side. Why are we doing accessibility? What does it benefit people? Why is it so important to be fully inclusive with everything we do? So there's a human side to it. Then there's the business side, where what does it cost a company not to be compliant? Loss of income. We are excluding people. They're standing outside, can't get in. The reputational issues. The there's other things. So there's a business side to it. And lastly, we have the legal side, where there's a potential to be sued either in a real lawsuit or an ADA demand letter. And once you have done that, I put that into part of my tiers is once you have been sued once, you are not off the hook. In fact, you are now living on somebody's list, and they will come back and check you again and again. And as soon as you fall out of compliance, guess what? You get another letter or you get another lawsuit. So it's a downhill slight slope of unpleasantness that we will, with understanding these three tiers, they work together. And I talk to people about them in different ways depending on who I talk to. If somebody who's afraid of lawsuits, I start with that, but you can't have one without the other. So my very first thing I do, and I do that to everybody, I don't care how many years you've been in the business, you will learn the three pillars of accessibility according to me, according to my academy, and you will learn those because that is how you're going to introduce yourself and your services to people. Um, and I consider that my biggest level of advice for people. Once you understand those three pillars, you have a very good foundational understanding of what accessibility is on various levels.
Kim, thank you so much for joining me today. I think that you've shared so much. There's so much that people are going to be able to extract from this. Thank you for sharing. Kim, you operate one. If you want to hire Kim directly, you can go to accessibilityconsulting.com. There you can ask Kim about services for accessibility, also fractional accessibility. And then you operate the Accessibility Business Academy. And so we'll include links to both of those in the description. Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you very much, Kris. Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.